Before we begin, I want to state that this will be the one and only spoiler warning for the rest of this video. I will be talking about major plot points for both Mother 3 and Squid Game, so if you have any interest in either and want to stay surprised, you should experience them first, and then come back to hear me rant about their connections. With that out of the way, the Mother series is my favorite media franchise ever. I've honestly spent so much of my time in the worlds of these three games that if there's even the slightest similarity of a story beat in anything else I play, watch, or read, you can bet on me subconsciously comparing it to Itoi's Trilogy. It's only natural then that when I began watching this show in which captives are made to play life or death children's games for the twisted amusement of the elite, I immediately thought of the particularly disturbing tendencies of Mother 3's master Porky Minch. To give a brief synopsis before I explain any further, Mother 3 is a Japanese RPG, primarily starring three motherless children and their dog, who fight to save their homeland, the Nowhere Islands, from a totalitarian takeover by the unprincipled Pigmask army. Squid Game is a Korean TV thriller taking place on a Nowhere Island, which hosts an underground battle royale game show where poverty-stricken participants literally sign their lives away to compete for a chance at an enormous cash prize. So if a player loses any of the 6 games or otherwise fails to adhere to their binding contract, they're forced to pay the ultimate price. All of these games are supervised and enforced by anonymous pink uniformed guards, who bear a strong resemblance to the pigmasks of Mother 3. These armed foot soldiers donning pink suits and helmets to obscure their faces. The only difference, besides one group of troopers being far more competent than the other, is that the Squid Game sentry's rank is denoted by shapes rather than color, with exception to their highest superiors, the front man dressed all in black and the gold-garbed VIPs. This hierarchy is not dissimilar to the Pigmask army, and one of the VIPs even wears a golden pig mask befitting of King P himself. However, it is the man behind the gilded owl mask I think best represents Porky, the one secretly behind it all, and who similarly doesn't reveal their identity until the story's climax, that being the elderly Il-nam. This dying man is the founder of Squid Game, an apparently global operation that's been running annually since the late 80s, created to enthrall otherwise spiritless, ultra-rich aristocrats like himself. His belief is that humans are inherently depraved and selfish, which is all the self-justification needed for him and his clients to indulge in this barbaric form of gambling. And while he does seem to pity the poor, he thinks so little of human life in general, having been responsible for the massacre of thousands by the time of his little speech. He and his followers see this blood sport as nothing more than high-stakes, riveting fun, as his own corrupt version of horse betting. Compare this to the big bad of Mother 3, King Porky, the most troublemaking boy ever, who abused time travel so much that his body prematurely withered and aged. With the mind of a prepubescent boy housed in the physique of an old man, and with an entire army under his command, the sickly Porky barks out orders from his throne atop a spider mech, reveling in childish acts of cruelty, solely to try and relieve his insatiable boredom. He experiments on and successfully modifies the innocent animals of the forest, turning them into unruly chimeras simply to, in his own words, make them cooler. Both Porky and Il-nam share a specific fascination with the unsettling combination of violence and nostalgia. The former herds the last of the living humans to an ostentatious city, a trap designed by and for his infantile heart to celebrate the end of all life, i.e. his planned murder of everyone there. New Pork City was inspired by the memories of his childhood contorted into something sinister, mirroring the deadly, sentimental games Il-nam and his colleagues crafted. Like Il-nam, Porky has zero qualms with murder, if it makes for an interesting spectacle, treating his fellow species like his own personal playthings, all because he's written off humanity as being irredeemably stupid and evil. In his mind, he may as well play the part as best he can. This matches Il-nam's beliefs to the extent that he bets against the main character, Song Gi-hun, on his deathbed in the final episode to prove the point. Observing the street through a window high up from within his complex, Il-nam watches a freezing, drunken, slumped-over vagabond lie without any passerby stopping to help him. He wagers that this will continue on, and come midnight, nobody will have saved this poor man. Our protagonist, of course, opposes that, and bets everything that at least one person will care, showing that despite all the immoral, impious things he's seen and has had to endure throughout the show, he still has a glimmer of hope for humanity, which we'll talk more about in a bit. One of the most heartbreaking things Gi-hun had to undergo in Squid Game was the namesake final game, a death match between him and his childhood friend, who was like a brother to him, Cho Sang-woo. With each episode that had passed until this point, we saw Sang-woo spiral down a worsening moral path, starting with the betrayal of Gi-hun by withholding crucial information that nearly got him killed, and peaking with the outright murder of a wounded finalist Gi-hun had just recently befriended. As a way for his adversary to perhaps atone for his sins, their confrontation concludes after Sang-woo is bested but spared by Gi-hun, with the former stabbing his own throat with a knife his old friend refused to finish him off with, as he bleeds out and dies, securing Gi-hun's victory to ensure that this nightmare wasn't all for naught, and that in the end, the prize money went to the better man. In Mother 3, Lucas and Klaus are actual brothers pitted against each other by Porky for a homogeneous one-on-one final battle. The latter twin, who was implied to have died, was reconstructed with his memories repressed by the Pigmask army. But as he's fighting against his own family, he begins to realize what he's become and decides to kill himself while he's still in control, by aiming a fatal blast of lightning at Lucas's lightning deflective Franklin badge. Gi-hun and Sang-woo weren't related, but these climactic circumstances are similar, and this theme of siblings specifically dueling each other appears elsewhere within the show anyway, as seen in the penultimate episode where the mysterious frontman shoots down an undercover agent, who is just revealed to be his own brother, presumably and supposedly killing him in cold blood. That's some heavy betrayal, but getting back to the show's lesson about holding out hope for humankind, no matter how faint that optimism may be, I find it fascinating that Mother 3 shares this exact message, depending on how you interpret the game's much more ambiguous ending. For those unaware but are still watching, the last two chapters of Mother 3 become a race between Lucas, who is pure of heart, and his transformed brother, who no longer has a heart, to pull the majority of the 7 magical needles, keeping an omnipotent dragon sleeping underneath the Nowhere Islands, so that one of them will become its master, awakening it so that they can pass on their spirited wish, which is, in Lucas's case, likely giving everyone a second chance at life, or in the Masked Man's, aka Klaus's case, to erase the breath of life itself, essentially extinguishing all of existence as we know it. I, and many other fans, subscribe to the notion that despite the insurmountable anguish he just experienced in losing his twin brother, Lucas was able to successfully pass his good-natured heart onto the dragon, and reset the Nowhere Islands to a cleansed state, before the Pigmask tainted it. This would mean that despite the majority submitting to Porky and turning up their noses to Lucas for 3 long years, he still wanted to give everyone another shot, truly believing in the good still buried deep inside these scornful people. Furthermore, despite trying to kill them, both Porky and Il-nam share an odd fixation on their story's respective heroes. Lucas likely reminded Porky of Ness, his old neighbor, as the closest person he could call a friend, as he shows genuine affection in his own warped way by thanking him later for playing along until the end. I think it's similarly safe to assume that Song Gi-hun somehow reminded Il-nam of one of his friends from back when he was growing up, and so a genuine care for the young man arose amidst the deceit. Il-nam joining the game himself and, in hindsight, repeatedly toying with Gi-hun while shamefully feigning dementia sort of reminds me of Porky, egocentrically forcing Lucas to lose against a miniature robot in His Highness's likeness, but only by a razor-thin margin so as to make the victory look convincing. There's much more to potentially discuss here. You could argue that one of the major themes in both stories is to criticize the capitalist system, in both obvious and subtle ways respectively, but I'm going to wrap things up in a coffin-shaped present, sans the incinerator for now, and leave any further conversation for the comments. Congratulations to everyone who's made it to the end of this video. I sadly have no cash prize or steak dinners to offer, but you all have my deepest thanks. See you next time.